morning, good afternoon, good evening. Zimbabwe's political soup is thickening. The tragedy is the dialogue is just going in circles. We are not addressing the substantive issues, but just regurgitating the same old arguments that we've heard before being recycled. And some people are falling for it. And that is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. Here is a video that has been circulating today, and I'm sure will be circulating for days, if not weeks to come. Of Savior Kasukuwere, former minister in the Zanu PF government, and one of the ministers who was booted out in the 2017 GNU, 2017 military coup.
This is the reality of what happened, and this is what we're dealing with.
There's calls for President Emerson Mnangagwa to step down from war veterans and other voices in Zimbabwe. Do you think that this could be a second 2017 Lodi?
Well, I think it's not the second 2017 alone. It is a Mnangagwa process, which starts with Governance Tole being ousted from the leadership of Zanu. President Mugabe, the constituents we are talking about, the war veterans, like them or hate them, but they constitute a very important strain in our country. They're part of the politics of Zimbabwe. They fought for the country to be independent. Many of them died. Those who are alive still constitute leadership in some of the key institutes of our country, the military, the police, and defense, and so forth, security. So once a call has been made, by the way, remember, war veterans, by definition, are an extension of the defense forces. They are actually members of the defense forces. There is the Ministry of Defense and War Veterans Affairs. They also have another Ministry of Veteran Affairs, Warfare. So there were two ministries. They are commissioned. Some of them have commissioned the ranks. Some of them were active soldiers. Some of them never participated in the army after independence, but the majority did. So they're a reserve force. It's always been said that they are a reserve force. So that call by the war veterans is a very serious call. It's not a call that you can underestimate. When it was made to President Mugabe, naively then, we thought, oh, maybe it's just a passing phase. But once it has been made, and once it is based on facts, not emotions.
Do you think this one is based on facts?
No, listen to the 10 to 12 reasons that Geza puts across. Very solid. Very solid. He talks about corruption. He talks about the land question, where oligarchs now have come in to head the land transitional processes, whatever it is. But they are national structures, governmental structures. There's a parliament, there's a ministry with civil servants, there's a land commission. Geza disputes the process of the title deserve is being done because it negates the reasons for the struggle of independence. Geza speaks to obviously the element of corruption, tribalism, clearly. It doesn't need even an idiot not to see that Mnangagwa, what he has done, has unfairly been tribalistic all the way through. Geza speaks to children of the powerful man, how they've become themselves senior political adjudicators. They carry with them borrowed robes, power on them. The death of the generals, which Geza talks about, has it been investigated? Is it a fact or not? If he says 18 generals lost their lives and we want to know how they died, how do you take that as a joke? He's talking about his comrade in arms who passed on. So these are very, very serious matters that have been raised. And to ignore the issues that Geza has raised, then you're actually living in a fool's paradise. One.
Well, we can leave it there. The point here is Kasukuwere is now cheering and applauding the war veterans. And one other important point that he has mentioned here is that the war veterans who have got their origins in the army, the police, the CIO, the prison services, the retired war veterans, the demobilized war veterans, and so forth, have got a lot of power in Zimbabwe. And it's very true. The truth of the matter is that power, they got it from Zanu PF. When Zanu PF realized that they may lose power, they co-opted the war veterans, giving them the veto on who should rule Zimbabwe. Zanu PF brainwashed the war veterans into believing that Zanu PF was the only party fit to govern the country. Zanu PF leaders are the only ones who could be trusted with the destiny of the country. And this, the party the war veterans have used to exclude other opposition parties. And what better way of achieving that than labeling the opposition as puppets of the West seeking regime change. And those who support them, who dare to support the opposition, are not given any quota at all. They're treated in a similar way. This is what has retained this Zanu PF dictatorship for the last 45 years. But having given these war veterans the veto on who rules Zimbabwe, when the same war veterans found that they were living in abject poverty, it should have come as little surprise that they would turn around and want to tell Mugabe that he doesn't have the power anymore. And hence the 2017 military coup. As Kasukuwere himself admits there, Mugabe and the G40 thought, oh, this will this will blow over. It's just a phase. But when he failed to do so, because there were genuine reasons, one could not deny that millions of Zimbabweans were living in abject poverty by 2017. And of course, the overwhelming majority of the war veterans could not be saved from the rising tide of poverty. Yes, occasionally the party would throw a few crumbs to help them, give them a pension, which very quickly will be eroded by the hyperinflation, and particularly during elections, the party would come out with trinkets to entice the opposition to support Zanu PF, and made promises that the support would continue, although in many cases it was quickly forgotten. So the grievance of the war veterans living in poverty was there. The issue that he's talking about of corruption and so forth was also there. What matters here is we have got a group of individuals, war veterans, who have the veto on who rules the country. That has been at the heart of our problem. The country should not have only a select few who have got the veto. Who rules the country should be decided in a free, fair, and credible electoral process in which all Zimbabweans have a meaningful vote. That is the premise of good governance. When this right of the ordinary people was taken away, that is where the problem started. Because now, by bribing that limited electorate of war veterans, Zanu PF was able to retain itself in power. I think what we are looking at now is a situation where Geza and others are pointing the same accusing finger that the war veterans pointed at Mugabe in 2017. In other words, we've gone full circle. The same reasons for staging the military coup in 2017 are still valid now. And Kasukuwere knows it. What Kasukuwere is saying here is cheering the war veterans. I think his number one idea is to try to tell the war veterans and the rest of the electorate that the 2017 military coup booted out the wrong people. Should have booted out Mnangagwa and company. And therefore then he is seeing this as an opportunity for him and G40 to stage a political comeback. Some Zimbabweans have been saying, no, we know that Kasukuwere and company were equally corrupt. But the real power in Zimbabwe does not lie with the ordinary Zimbabweans, you and me and Povo out there, because we have not got a meaningful vote. It is the war veterans. And in this particular case, Geza and the others who, if they should manage to stop Mnangagwa extending his stay in power, will decide who governs Zimbabwe next. And it will not come as a surprise at all if they look to the likes of Kasukuwere as colleagues. And therefore, then we'll end up with a situation where the likes of Kasukuwere is back in office, back in power, so that he can continue looting from where he left off in 2017 when he was put out. In other words, we have not changed anything at all. We've just recycled the same corrupt, incompetent, and utterly useless individuals. This is at the heart of Zimbabwe's political problem. We have given political power to a select few. The right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country is a right that every Zimbabwean must enjoy. It is more than a right. It is the basis of good governance. People like Blessed Geza and his fellow war veterans who are today complaining that Mnangagwa is corrupt and all these other charges, which is all very true, they cannot also deny that they were the ones who imposed Mnangagwa on the nation in 2017. Just as they cannot deny they were the ones who have imposed Mugabe since 1980. Many of the war veterans were involved in the barbarism of 2008, for instance, when Mnangagwa launched the Operation Mafoterapapi and the atrocities that it caused. And people like Xavier Kasukuwere have been named as some of the Zanu PF leaders who helped shed innocent blood in the 2008 violence. The Zanu PF dictatorship has only lasted for all these years because a few select few have been given the political veto. That is at the heart of the argument. As long as those individuals retain that power and they've been brainwashed to believe that the only party competent to run the country is Zanu PF, and the only leaders competent to run the country are Zanu PF leaders, we will end up with a situation where we keep recycling the same corrupt, incompetent, and murderous thugs over and over again. Many people have heard statements from senior army commanders like Junawashe, I think many people could not deny that those statements were made by individuals who would have been put under enormous pressure by the regime to make those statements and to commit themselves to the Zanu PF dictatorship. And once you have crossed the line, the point of no return, you have no choice but to continue supporting the dictatorship. Here is Commander Shinawashe speaking at one such occasion.
We wish to make it very clear to all Zimbabwean citizens that the security organization will only stand in support of those political leaders that will pursue Zimbabwe's value, traditions, belief, for which thousands of lives were lost in pursuit of Zimbabwe's hard-won independence, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the national interest. To this end, let it be known that the highest office on the land is a straitjacket, whose occupant is expected to observe the objectives of the liberation struggle. We will therefore not accept, let alone support or salute anyone with a different agenda that threatens the very existence of our sovereignty, our country, and our people.
The laughable thing about that statement is, of course, the army now are sitting as the accuser, the prosecutor, the judge, the jury, and the executioner. The army or war veterans are the ones who decide who is acting in the interests of the people of Zimbabwe. Of course, that is ridiculous. They have been brainwashed into believing that only Zanu PF leaders are competent to rule. And now they've got to defend that position, even coming up with such outrageous statements like that. The truth of the matter is, Zimbabwe is caught up in this vicious political cycle where we cannot change the regime through democratic and peaceful means, free, fair, and credible elections. And now we can only change them through military coup or the war veterans imposing their veto power to remove whoever is the leader of the day. And as long as that electorate is confined to those few who have been brainwashed into believing that only the leaders can be selected from Zanu PF, we are stuck. And that is the situation we must reject. And reject emphatically. At the present moment, the issue of replacing one dictator with another is not going to change anything. That is the argument. We removed Mugabe and replaced him with Mnangagwa. That did not change anything. we still had the dictatorship. And as long as the dictatorship is still there, we cannot expect good governance. Now we want to replace Mnangagwa with Chiwenga. What will change? Nothing. I think the people of Zimbabwe should focus on what really matters. What really matters is that we change the system. We end the dictatorship. We end this belief that only war veterans have the veto to decide on who governs Zimbabwe. They alone would decide who can be trusted with the destiny of the country. That was never meant to be part of the armed struggle before independence. People fought for one man, one vote. And it was never said that only those who were carrying the gun will have the veto. The rest of us will have a token vote, which doesn't count. It only counts if it happens to coincide with what the war veterans wanted. That is nonsense. War veterans do not have the wisdom, the infinite wisdom that they and they alone should decide who is competent to run the country. Let's restore sanity in our political system. No Zimbabwean should be denied a meaningful say in the governance of the country. This notion by Zanu PF ruling elite of giving the war veterans the veto was done for a purpose, to make sure that Zanu PF and Zanu PF alone rules the country. That is the notion that we must now reject. That is the challenge. We should not compromise on that point. We should not be fooled into believing there's anything of substance that can ever be achieved as long as we have a situation where only a select few have a say in the governance of the country. Zimbabwe is not the only nation that had an armed struggle. Why we should believe that only those who carry the gun have the veto and can be trusted to rule the country beggars belief. This is just brainwashing. People being brainwashed into believing some really nonsensical ideas. We need to overhaul our political system to the point where we really have a clean start. The idea of recycling Zanu PF dead wood is getting us nowhere. We need a clean start. It is a pity, and I've said it on this platform, that we had the golden opportunity during the 2008-2013 GNU to implement the democratic reforms, which would have guaranteed the independence of such institutions as the army, the police, ZEC, judiciary, to be able to deliver the rights and freedoms of all Zimbabweans. That opportunity was lost because the opposition failed to implement even one token reform. We are where we are. How do we move from here? I believe right now, the most important thing to focus on is to stop participating in a flawed electoral process only to give Zanu PF legitimacy. That has been the problem since the GNU of 2008 to 2013. Zanu PF has been smart enough to bribe the opposition to participate in these flawed elections. We must be smart enough now to realize the sheer futility of participating in a flawed process that is so flawed, we know we cannot change the result. And we also know that by participating, we give Zanu PF legitimacy. And yet, the opposition has continued to participate because they also knew that Zanu PF was giving away a few gravy train seats and those they could not resist. And we, the people, should be smart enough to realize that the opposition is taking us for a ride. One of the really disappointing things about Zimbabwean people is that the people, some of the 2 million people participated in the 2023 elections are, by all accounts, intellectuals. How anyone could be conned into believing that Chamisa had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes beggars belief. He claimed that he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. And yet, the day after the voting was done, he was the one coming out and saying the elections were rigged. So what were you talking about then? We need to overhaul our political system, but I also believe we need to overhaul our thinking as a people. The ancient Greeks say that democracy only works when the people are educated, knowledgeable, diligent in their duty to hold those in positions of power and authority to account. I think Zimbabweans, we are far from that. If somebody can be easily conned into believing an idiotic lie like the opposition will win rigged elections, even after 45 years of rigged elections, that beggars belief. We are not interested in recycling the likes of Kasukuwere, removing one dictator to replace him with another dictator. Is not solving our problem at all. That is the message I would like to leave with you today. Have a good day. Thank you very much.